open to the possibility of dating somebody outside my social upbringing and my cultural orientation. You understand? So I'm open even up to this day of marrying somebody who's from a different cultural background. And precisely because it's a conscious decision I'm taking to challenge those stereotypes, to challenge those negative patterns that I grew up seeing. And I get so much frustrated when I see those things playing out even to this day, even in instances where I can play a positive role. But obviously over and above that, because I think you would have noticed, it's so difficult for a petty guy to talk about his story without mentioning his mother.
Absolutely.
So I think I've also fallen into that trap of talking about women, but I think it's befitting to acknowledge the lady. But growing up myself, I think I've not also had it easy. I grew up in a context where it was fashionable to drink. It was also fashionable to smoke. It was also fashionable to date, But because of the responsibility that I carried, not a responsibility that I carried because I was given the responsibility by somebody else. It's a responsibility that I assumed myself to say, I'm growing up in a context of generational curses.
Absolutely.
And I have to decide to become the change that I want to see in this family. I mean, I grew up you said your father was, you grew up in a family where a father was a drunkard. I think a drunkard is a strong word, but I think for a want of a better expression, I would use that as well. My father was a drunkard and is somebody who was thought much less in the community. A much less respected person in the community, somebody who's just dismissed as
a fly.
Yeah, so you are just drunk. Whatever comes from his mouth then is denuded and ends up really amounting to nothing. And I think I saw that also playing out in some of my brothers, right? I think I then decided, you know what, this has to change. Right? It has to change, and to change, it can't just change by word of mouth. I have to live a life that is different from what I've seen in my surroundings. And then I made a decision to never smoke. I think that decision came before I could become a Christian. Because I've seen it playing out in my close vicinity, and I wanted to make a change.
And it hits because I would say it. I loved my father so much. May his soul rest in peace. I'm the firstborn in the family, and as a girl child, you need that warmth from a father. Before I can even say, like, he needs to teach me how to be loved first before. It's easy for me to get into relationships which I know I deserve because I know I've been treated like this at home. This is the standard that my father set. But it is unfortunate that I didn't get that from my father. We never had a good relationship. And I'll tell you, for a long time I was very angry at him, to some extent telling me if it was other people or anyone that they were, I would have been far more pillow. Until I took a decision to try to understand where does he come from. Was he growing up in a unit? It's a family, a healthy family unit. Why would like, you get my point? I'm looking at the characters. I mean, and how would you behave like that? What makes you behave like that? And it I had a conversation trying to understand the history, the grandmothers, the family unit, and information came to say the mother and the father were not staying in the same place. So it was more like, and I remember every household in its own. So there was never a place of peace and rest. There was never a place of, I am learning that that's when I was young. So it's more of, and that thing, it made me realize, that's why he was acting the way he was. And he was never there. So his upbringing, he was from one place to another. There was no place where he got to understand what I've got kids, I've got to raise them, I've got to be present. So do you understand that thing? Me, after understanding where does it come from, that's when I realized being angry at him is a waste of time. It's either I get to decide to heal that pain and understand he couldn't give me what he never got. But now I have to learn something different. Because if I get into the same trap, any man can do whatever they want. I will not have standards. It's more of as long as kinale muthu. Did you get my point? So some values and principles, we get them from what we've grown up in. So the very same thing you said, to say sometimes it's not about something happening for you to change, but it's more of that pain makes you, because you feel like to say, if I'm rejected by my own father, then rejection, when you rejected by your own blood, it becomes difficult to accept it, and you end up seeking comfort in people that are not for you, simply because all you know is rejection. So I like the fact that you also highlighted, you know what, it didn't even take me, it was not through Christianity that we had to change or I'm no longer smoking, but it was more of the brokenness that you see and you are following through to say it cuts here. But getting into that, what changed? I mean, changing something takes a lot from you. A lot. How did it change? How did it take much from you? I need you to explain that experience for you, because sometimes you are rejected for the fact that you are choosing something different. So let's get into that, because it's your.
That's precisely the predicament that I found myself in, being rejected because of the choices and the path that you choose in life, right? And this rejection comes in a multifaceted ways. It could be rejection from your friends, and it could be rejection from your social cycle. Because you can imagine, I think it's been I've tested alcohol, but it was just out of fashion. I've tested alcohol, I think sometime about 15 to 16 years ago. So, but I've never smoked, right? I think my background is such that I could have made excuses about a lot of things. And I think there's a lot that you can attribute your behavior to. You can blame your family for who you are. You can blame your extended family for how they treated your mother, as I almost ran into that same trap myself. You can also blame your friends. You can blame the community leader that you grew up looking up to, who was a mafia and harassing everyone. You can blame an absent father. You can blame the last person that you dated and say, the reason I'm this broken is because of this person. But at the end of the day, it boils down to you as an individual. It boils down. It's a conscious. I think a lot of what happens in our lives requires choices and deliberate, conscious decisions to say. Because I think I carried that burden. I was speaking about growing up and not being able to date. It was not, I think I remember at some instance, because I happened to have been fortunate enough to also participate in leadership programs in high school. As early as primary school, I was already in leadership throughout my high school years. So I remember there was this guy, I wouldn't mention his name for obvious reasons. So he said to me, "But Chief, you are so smart and so into the public eye that I think every lady in this school would want to be with you. So what is the challenge? Why can't you find a girlfriend? I've never had a story about you dating anyone." Obviously, I wouldn't say the observation was accurate 100%, because there are instances where I would date, but much of my time back then I spent outside dating. And the reason is because I believed if I had dated at that time, then it would deny me the opportunity to reach the goals that I had set for myself. So I thought of dating as a distraction to the end goal, because my end goal was, unfortunately, if I were to lay background again, I would say I couldn't see the possibility of having a future outside the formal education system. Because I understood as early as possible that without education, my chances of success are very limited.
Absolutely.
I don't have a rich aunt. I don't have an inherent, what is this? An estate that I've inherited from my grandfather. My father is here.
So everything boils down to
everything.
Decide, what do I do with this situation? And it goes back to, let's get into the dating context, because that is also very dating, like what attracts us to some extent is traumas. I'll tell you why. For an example, when someone comes, let me put it in a context of rejection, speaking from a context of rejection. When a man comes to you, especially when all you know is rejection, and let's go out on a date, right? You like, oh, this person sees value in me. Ne? And we're not really like in a space where there's rejection. You don't see much of a value because that's how they've played. There's the space they've placed you in. The moment that let's go out on a date, for you it's like, whoo, yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, I've made it. I want you to, I'm trying to highlight the impact of, like, the deepness of the traumas that we go through and the choices that we make. You would see it as if, wow, this person, I want to value him. Okay, we would go on a date. But trust me, you would not have a say in a relationship. Ne? Not because you don't want to, but because of you want to protect that goodness that person do to you. So you can't voice it and say, Sijapala, I don't like this. Because once you do that, what's going to happen? Rejection.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to highlight what rejection is very much deep. In a way, we react and we engage with people. And to some extent, you are seeking comfort in places that are not yours. Because you just want to belong because I've been rejected.
And then you settle for less.
You settle for less because I just want to belong. I don't know any other feeling of acceptance, but here, whether it's in a wrong place, wrong relationship, like you just want to be accepted. And I want us to talk about how do you intentionally be conscious of what is it that has broken you, and what is it, how do you come out of that, so that whatever that you perceived its life because of your brokenness, you can get out of it with the conscious thing. Or I thought, my thinking traits were that way simply because of the trauma or the brokenness I was in. But now I'm conscious of this. If I continue with this, I'm going to continue to make wrong decisions simply because I'm seeking comfort. Even when someone abuses you or is not for you, you stay simply because of there's acceptance and there's comfort. So you can't say, no, I don't like this and that. I want us to dwell into that because it affects us also in relationship.
Yes.
And as a man, right, we need to be conscious because sometimes we date simply because of the standards. Or you need to take me out on a date, but it's deeper than that. If I live with you, I need to understand your traumas, you need to understand mine. So that you get to understand why is it I'm acting the way I am acting. Why is it that whenever you try to play with me, give my emotion. I can't even perceive it as you are being emotional, I'm just joking. But maybe I'm being emotional because all things have been set up. I can't even say voice out and say I don't like it. That's why the best response is what instead of saying, please don't ever play like that. So I want us to dwell into it to say, how do we make conscious decision of understanding what there are generational curses? And even when we get into relationships, we need to be conscious of that. I have my baggage. You have your baggage. How do we sit down, try to build something and supporting each other in that context to say, we can't ignore the fact that we are from different backgrounds. For an example, you spoke about your mother in different cultures. Now you've made a decision, I'm going to explore. And you might find out even your partner, there is a baggage she comes with. How do you as a man create a safe space for her to be able to bring her traumas to say, this is what I'm struggling with. And because when someone brings their traumas, there's some way you need to support them, but only if you are conscious for it. I've been through this journey. Now I know what to do to give them, when to give them space, when to support them and all that. How would you, as a young man, create that kind of environment? Because it's important. It's very much important.
No, I think there's no magic formula to it, right? I think the first step that one would take under such circumstances is to first have that deeper conversation with themselves. I think a lot of us make the mistake of not wanting to admit our past, and also beyond just admitting that I have a problem.
Absolutely.
Right? And trying to identify steps that you can take in order to address that problem. Because if you deny that you have traumas, and if you deny that you are angry, because I think that is the first step that one should take.
Yes.
That I'm angry because of 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right? If you start from that premise, then you build a foundation. The next step is to say, how has this benefited me so far? And what more should I do? What can I do to change that? Because anger, the first step that you can take to deal with anger is to acknowledge that you are angry.
Yes, acknowledgement.
Acknowledge that you are angry.
Say, I'm conscious that I'm angry.
I'm angry because of 1, 2, 3. I'm blaming this and that and that and that and that. But it doesn't end there. The problem is we get fixated.
Yes. After acknowledging, then you think you are done.
Yeah, you get paralyzed, and then you want to become, because if you get paralyzed at the stage of acknowledgement, then there won't be progress in your life. You grow up bitter, you become bitter forever. So I think if you acknowledge you're angry, and I think I made this acknowledgement the last time to say, one of the things that I believe in is talking.
Yes.
I can talk until ANC goes out of power.
Yeah. And not many men, talk. Because as your role as a man, it's we will get into it. But I'm just trying to say, we put baggage in you because you are my authority. Your role in my life is authority. Whatever that behavior, I come to you and put it on you. So talking also assists that. I love the fact that you mentioned you like talking as a way of.
I vent out through talking because let me tell you something for historical background. Back about centuries ago, we lived in a hunter-gatherer sort of setting where men would go out to hunt and to fend for their families, right? And then the women or the ladies would look after the family. Because of the strength, the physical strength that the man is bestowed with naturally, men would go out and hunt. And then the survival of females would relate very much or depend very much on the hunting skills of a man.
Thank you.
Right? So those roles have shifted now. We no longer need to hunt in order to survive. So what has happened is that as men, we've struggled to find our new role in society, right? Because women no longer need us to survive. Women today can do almost everything that a man can do. Right, if not everything, if I remove the word almost, because there's nothing that you cannot do as a maid. So now, in order to express the need and to express the role that we've always played as men, some of us have resorted to physical violence.
And it's a natural role, by the way.
It's a natural role.
It's still there. It's nature, and even powerful women, the most powerful feminism who are pushing for, they are still yearning for that.
They need a man, one way or another. Even the most well-resourced lady,
I'm telling you,
she still needs a man who can take her out
your
to
role
McDonald's,
cannot be fulfilled by anyone else except you.
Or even to Chicken Licken, just to order a piece of meat that is worth 100 rands. That's what builds us into humans, is the natural
need for each other.
Exactly, and we can't tamper with that. But the problem is now, men haven't found a way to express their natural role. Understand? They become angry when they are challenged. Because now, and that anger is expressed through physical violence. Because now you are no longer needed. You have a challenge, you are no longer needed for survival. Because a lady will beg you back in the days, because if she doesn't, then she has to go out in the jungle and hunt for herself. And that is it's a dangerous experiment. So now women don't need us to play that role anymore. And when you can't fully find yourself as a man, when you do not know your role as a man in a woman's life, then you resort to physical violence, right? So I think to deal with that anger, to find our natural role in society as men, we need to first start by talking.
What is it that I've been dealing with? What are my generational cases? How do I address them? How do I change? Because the truth of the matter is, I will tell you this from a personal experience, is that I've always said that respect the partner of a person you see successful. Yeah? And I've got my reasons. For an example, you say, hey, Madam President has achieved this and that and that. And I would say, respect my partner. You know why? In the world, I'm this strong woman and I'm standing and I'm an inspiration. But the reality of the matter is, I'm fighting in the world, but there's a rest at home to say, my partner is the one who can see the tears, the struggle, and the reality of what am I giving out there. Because it starts somewhere. When I have to do something, it takes a lot from me. Sometimes something has, I come home and cry. That's my rest. You understand? And hence I'm saying there's a natural need for each other. There is a natural need for each other. And I don't want to, because of our wounded, it's like we are wounded.
Very much so.
We are wounded. That's why you might hear a woman say, I don't need a man. When you try to understand the deeper thing, something has happened that hurt her to an extent that she doesn't want a man. You don't want this, but we need. There's a difference. So to get to a conclusion that I don't want a man because something has happened, but there's that natural need. So what I'm trying to get at is that we need to be conscious, because this thing affects how we play our role, even in relationships, even in marriages. It reflects back to that. Because if you are still struggling with your own, and I come back to you and challenge you, or maybe pose a question and it triggers you, like some of them will bow and you get my it comes from far.
It's not about the question.
It's not about the question.
It's not about what happened.
Thank you.
You understand? It's about those deep-seated inner issues that haven't been expressed.
Absolutely.
Understand? Because I think for me, the way I deal with my anger and the way I deal with my masculinity and the way I I find a way to deal with my physical strength, because this physical strength is something that will come out every now and then, and you want to push objects. And if the next object, if the object next to you is a female, then you push her.
It happens.
You see, so I talk. Just talk. I think we've also made a mistake of identifying and presenting the problem with men as a problem of men. You said something about not wanting a man. There are ladies who say they don't want a man at all. That is a problem of men, not a problem with men. Because if we shift the discourse and we identify it as a problem with men have so many problems.
Absolutely.
This is precisely what I mean. Men have so many problems and they are not acknowledging that they do have problems. Now what happens is we have identified men as a problem of society.
That's what
then we must get rid of them.
Men are dogs.
Men are trash. We must trash them from the surface of the earth because we have misdiagnosed the problem. And we're not here obviously to be sure. We're not here to make excuses about men who butcher women and those who rape old ladies and young toddlers. We're not here for that. Those will be dealt with separately by the necessary and relevant authorities, law enforcement authorities. We are not, but we're speaking here of a societal ill, right? We have societal ills here, and the first societal ill is men are not giving themselves. I don't want to say it's women who are not providing themselves the space, because that is also making an excuse for us. It's about choices.
It's about choices.
You make the choice to talk to your partner
to say, I don't want this and that.
And you go back home now. I get there. The lady says one thing and she does another. I talk until the earth shakes. And until she says, now you're dragging the matter for too long, I've had you, Chief, now you need to relax. I talk, I vent out. And you'll be also fortunate enough to find somebody when you talk, they listen to you, and as opposed to back and forth type of issue. Because if it's back and forth, then it becomes something else.
It's a problem. And I love what you said, because when you talk, I mean it's you saying, I value this relationship, and I'm talking because I expect a certain change, right? Because I can see what you are doing or what you are continuously doing is ruining what we are building. So it goes back to, what am I struggling with? For an example, most women will be perceived as strong women. Yeah, you're strong. I will make an example with me, because this is a reality. I'm not even afraid to do that, to say that. I would say firstly, I'm a firstborn at home.
Yes.
And you know there are certain responsibilities as a firstborn. You can't be crying, there are others coming after you. So you need to be